Second thing we have forgotten is our moral underpinnings. As morality continues to decline, companies will follow suit and become more and more immoral because they know you don't care. They're not going to produce something that you won't buy. And if you'll buy the easy road, that's the one they're going to make. And we get trapped in this vicious cycle of immorality. And since we haven't been able to properly police ourselves in quite a while, that's what gives us crony capitalism. Because somebody has to step in. Somebody's got to help. I need a policeman, an economic policeman. Somebody's got to step in. And that policeman is always government, who are usually in bed with all of the biggest crony capitalists. Now, because they got to keep you off the trail and they have to keep you fat and sassy so you'll continue to vote for them, they have to give you free stuff. And people don't care what it costs anymore because they're not paying for it. They don't care who's paying for it, how they get it, what it means. They don't even think about it. Just give it to me. A lack of immorality and intelligence, quite honestly. Healthcare is a great example. People have no reason to keep the costs down. Well, I mean, why? I don't have anything to do with it. I paid for my health care. Give it to me. And they just down the gullet anything they want to down. They eat whatever they want. They do whatever they want. But this causes a problem. Because, as my parents used to say, as long as you're living under my roof, you'll do what I say. Oh, okay. Well, whose roof are we living under? Certainly not ours anymore if it's free. And that's why Michael Bloomberg and the Michael Bloombergs of the world can step in and say, ho, 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 slow down, fatty, fat, fatso. Slow down on the show soda and the junk food. Because we're paying for it now. And in this scenario, Michael Bloomberg is absolutely right. In this scenario, individuals have given up their responsibility to pay their own way. And so they have to give up the freedom to choose what they consume. Not only is Bloomberg right, New Yorkers get what they deserve. And unfortunately, the rest of the world is about to get it too. Hayek wrote about this problem because Hayek, this book comes from 1944. And he was trying to explain to people what the problem is. Where does totalitarianism come from? He says money is one of the greatest instruments of freedom ever invented by man. What does that mean? Money is an instrument of freedom? You bet it is. You bet it is. Tell me this country hasn't been the freest nation on earth. Oh yes, well we've also been the richest. Yes. Do you think maybe they go hand in hand? Freedom from oppression, freedom from thugs, freedom from disease. He wrote this book, Road to Serfdom, when he was trying to explain to the world what he thought would lead to the rise of totalitarianism. On today's show, we want to talk about what happens when freedom disappears, because it's coming, and you need to be prepared. And you need to teach your children what causes it. And you need to teach your children what makes a country wealthy. And don't rely on the schools because they won't teach it. Wealth of nations. But please understand that there is no wealth of nations without moral sentiments. I'll show you some of the worst cases of history and totalitarianism and what causes it. But not just in the past, in our society today, in our own country, believe it or not. When you lose freedom, you will always lose responsibility first. And what kind of, really this one is freedom and responsibility. What is the easiest to lose? It is always money. You have a responsibility with your money to act with moral sentiment. But also, when you don't, that's the first freedom to lose. If you lose your responsibility with money, you'll lose the freedom of money. You see, everything you do is attached to your bottom line. So when a tyrant turns against his people and slaughters them, why does he do it? He's grabbing for power and control, and he controls them by controlling your money. That's what he wants, and that's his control. This is called central planning. Central planners might even have the best intentions in mind, I'm sure. I'm sure Bloomberg, for instance, he cares so much about the health of everyone living in the trash bags in the subways underneath his luxury apartment. But central planners and central planning never ends well. A planner will just remove your freedom to choose. For instance, Bloomberg, he doesn't just ban cigarettes. No, he just removes them from the shelves right there in front of you. Makes it harder for you to find them. He's not going to ban your ability to drink large amounts of soda. It's going to force you to order 5 Cokes when you get your salad. That's it. Forget about banning stuff. Forget about banning stuff. We're nudging. Well, how far are we from nudge to shove? Because it seems like we're not very far from the shove, them forcing us to do things.
But when it comes to forcing you, it's really the only thing the government can do practically, and I think should do, is education. Exercise is great for you, but how do you convince people to do it, and should you force them to do it? Probably not.
Should you force them to do it? Probably not. Probably not. Taking away the freedom to choose means that ultimately there will be room for an economic dictator, a technocrat, to make every single choice for your society. Well, here at TheBlaze, we happen to believe that individuals should be allowed to follow their own values and preferences rather than somebody else's. It's just that easy. That, by the way, would be Hayek's words as well. We believe you should be able to choose your own principles, your own values, and do as you want in a free and responsible way. Moral sentiments. When you have a controlled system, because the society no longer has moral sentiment, it becomes a top-down one, a collectivist one. And what happens is that the lower classes are used by the government, and they are incited by class envy. And then the middle classes are incited as well. They're resentful of the upper classes. And this is what gives fuel for fascism and things like National Socialism or communism. But there is another ingredient, and that is human nature. There's a blog called Grasping Reality with Both Hands, and its author, Brad DeLong, just wrote a piece for Business Insider called Economics Must Answer for the Rise of Mass Murdering Tyrants. Economics. And it's mind-boggling how this author just doesn't see how the error of his ways. He illustrates how he totally doesn't understand how humans work. But him, and people like him, are particularly dangerous because they get some of it right. He writes that the tyrannies of the 20th century had, quote, their origins in economic discontent and economic ideologies. Yes, before the 20th century, listen to this, people slaughtered each other for other reasons. Really? They slaughtered each other over power. Who gets to be the top dog and command the material resources of society? Wait. But only in the 20th century have people killed each other on a large scale in disputes over the economic organization of society. Okay, so wait a minute. Before, they would just go and kill you and go house to house and rob you. But now they just want to go and control the bank so they could rob you in grand theft. Really? Call me crazy, but these are exactly the same thing, just scale. That's it. Somebody figured out a more efficient way to steal from people. But he says, no, that's not true when you think about it. Killing people on a large scale over what social mechanism should coordinate economic activity is profoundly stupid. You think? He says, we want social mechanisms that will work in the sense of delivering prosperity and progress. Oh, look at fair distribution of wealth. Isn't that great? No, this is where he gets it totally wrong, and people always do. Communism and socialism, fascism isn't about fairness or equality. That's why people who think it is are useful idiots. They are how tyrants rise to their positions. And as we told you they would, they are rising again. Not just in Greece, as we've told you now for a couple of years. We're seeing the nation in shambles because of its unsustainable debt, a society that doesn't want to work, and the middle of an economic crisis, and everybody's jobless. And so there's a new party on the rise. Surprise, surprise, the Nazis. It's called the Golden Dawn Party. The Golden Dawn Party is now the third most popular party in Greece, the Nazi Party. Imagine if that were the case here, the third most popular. You'd have the Republicans and the Democrats, and then the Nazis. And then, of course, you'd have your other smaller parties like the Green Party and Independent Party. But Republicans, Democrats, Nazis, the Green. Hello? That is the scenario in Greece, and they are recruiting and they are creating cells all throughout the world. They're even here in the United States. And they're targeting young people and students at school. And they're probably a heck of a lot better than the head of the GOP. That Priebus guy, he's good, isn't he? This isn't just happening in Greece. It is also happening in Hungary as well. The third biggest in parliament is using anti-Semitic slurs to achieve their standing. They've demanded lists of Jews to be drawn up for national security purposes. Where do they live? Where are they? Their foreign policy leader said the Jews who live there indeed pose a national security risk to Hungary. Their support among voters is young voters is nearly 20%, which means it is the strongest party in the age group below 30. Hungarians are desperate, just like the Weimar Republic Germany was. And this radical message resonates with many young disadvantaged Hungarians who blame the Jews or anyone else on their misfortunes. They do not have moral sentiment, they do not have God as we used to, and they don't have the Declaration of Independence, and they don't have the Constitution. Does any of this sound familiar? Ukraine is another one that is now seeing a rise in Nazi-like anti-Semitic parties. In October, they gained 38 of 450 seats in parliament. That's about 8.5% of the national legislature. In one city that was historically more than one-third Jewish, but almost all of the Jews were murdered by the Nazis, the party won 40% of the vote. And here is the latest. Economic crisis prompts Italians to take refuge in fascism. This party is called the Casa Pound movement. It is young, but it is gaining popularity in Italy now with 5,000 members. Like the Golden Dawn, they are anti-immigration. They also said Mussolini did well in many ways as a leader. They want to change the bad name of fascism. They say, foremost, fascism is just a way to govern the economy and the country. Yes, it is one way. In any country, no matter where it is, if you're an extremist or in a revolution, the best way, the best opportunity you have for a revolution is during a time of economic adversity. That's why people are driving our economy into the cliff. Let me give you a few statistics to prove it out. Studies have shown a link between political extremism and a decline in the GDP during the Great Depression. In 1920, there were 24 European regimes that were democracies. But by 1939, the number that were free, 11. Why? Depressions, more extremist, right-wing, left-wing parties. There were more right-wing extremist parties in states where the country was on the losing side of World War I. To the contrary, the number of Klan members here in the United States peaked at 5 million members, and that's in 1925. We were coming out of a really bad depression. It dropped from 5 million to 350,000 2 years later. Why? The anti-lynching laws? Nope. Government action? Nope. The economic boom of the Roaring '20s. Everything comes down to economics. That's why the president is playing golf while the economy is burning down. If we let big government get out of hand and continue to push us into this depression, while we do not pay attention to the moral sentiments, while we don't pay attention to doing the right thing, we are going to face these exact same issues in America sooner than you think. We already are. And there are only two outcomes. Big government, which will ultimately mean some sort of totalitarian state, or free markets. And that only happens with moral sentiments. It will mean that you have the freedom and the ability and the power over your own life, but you will have the maximum responsibility of your own life as well.